Hi, and welcome to SQL Fundamentals. In this lesson, we're going to help you create your first query. Let's get started. So for this series, I'm going to be relying heavily on a website that's free, doesn't require a login, and it's called w3schools.com. I'll put the link in the description, but when you go there, you should see a page that looks similar to this. What we're going to do is click on the link at the top called SQL or SQL, and it should take you to a page like this. Key thing to note is that at any time there is a really handy navigation bar on the left-hand side that allows you to click any of these links and see information about particular keywords in the SQL language. So there's a lot of different keywords to choose from, a lot of different things going on, and this will help you kind of have a reference where if we move through the video content and you just want a little bit more um, documentation, or you just want to go back and refer to something again, you can always come back to this website and click around just to revisit a concept. For this video being your first SQL query, you can just click on SQL Home, and if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a Try It Yourself button. Click that and wait a moment, and it'll take you to a new tab where we can start working through some code. Alright, so when the page loads, you should be presented with something that looks similar to this. Couple of key things on the page. There's really three components that you're going to look for. The first component is this text box here, which you can use to type in SQL code. We'll be using this heavily. The second thing is the database that we're going to be using is actually listed out here. All of the different table names that are on W3 Schools' server is right here so that you can refer to them and look inside them at any point. And at any time that you have code here, you can click the Run SQL green button below, and the results of the query will show up in the bottom box. You can scroll down a little bit to get a better view. So that's the three components. All right, so before we look at this query here, we need to understand what the database is on the back end and what it contains. You can think of a database like a file cabinet, and each of these table names here are separate folders or drawers in the file cabinet. So in this database, it's actually a very small one. There's about 8 tables. You can click through them at your own pace and just kind of read what's in them. It's a little bit self-explanatory, but the key thing to note is that for each of these tables, W3 Schools tells you how many records is inside of it. So for customers, there's 91 records. For categories, there's 8 records. For shippers, there's 3 records, and so on. If you click around in those tables, this is very similar to how a company's database would be structured, although your company may have many more tables than this depending on the complexity of the business. But this is a great, simple data set to learn from. What you'll notice, though, is if you keep clicking these links, your code in this text box changes. So I just clicked on employees, and it says select asterisk or select star from employees, and then it has a semicolon. This SQL code is telling the engine 2 different things. So let's break that apart. The first thing is what comes after the from is employees. Whenever you click on one of these table names and it writes this code, it's essentially telling SQL, I want you to return data from the employees table. And if I click on customers, it's essentially saying, SQL, return data to me from the customers table. So essentially, anything after the from keyword is a table. It is the data source that you want to pull data from. Pretty self-explanatory. The thing that's not so self-explanatory is what is happening at the beginning. Um, at least if you've never seen it before, it might be a little confusing. Select is very simple, actually. It means give me only the column names that I want to see in this table. So customers, for example, it has customer ID, customer name, customer, contact name, address, city, postal code, and country. It has a good number of fields. If you don't know what's in that table to start with, you can just put an asterisk sign and it's a wildcard. It essentially means return everything inside of customers, every single column name. So before entering in this code, I didn't know what the column names were. So it returns everything. But let's say you're in a situation where you don't care about really any of these columns except for the customer name and the city that they're from. All you got to do to return that is type in the customer name field, so customer name. After you delete the asterisk, put a comma, and then city. And if you click run, only those two columns will be returned. Pretty simple, right? Select customer name and city columns from the customers table is essentially how you read this. The cool thing about SQL is it's very flexible. And I want to go ahead and tell you this early on. It's very flexible in the sense that you don't really need to worry about spacing. So for example, I have a space between customer name and city. If I want to take that away and I click run, it'll still work. I can even add 10 spaces. Click run and it'll still work. I can come into any section of this code at all, press the enter key a few times, make a lot of white space. I can click run and it'll still work. So throughout this course, I'll probably be, depending on the query complexity, I'll probably be adding some white space to make it more readable. Just know that it doesn't really change what the code is doing. It just has to start with a select statement and in this particular query end with a from keyword, right? And it has to be in this order specifically. White space doesn't matter. So yeah, that's how you query tables in SQL. You can use this with any database that you have. Play around with W3 Schools here, try this out, get a feel for how to do something simple like this, and tune back into the next videos and we'll start to tackle some more complicated subjects. Thanks.